Welcome back to Proxam, everybody. And today I have Hayden back with us again after his debut at the World Championships of Warhammer. How you doing today, Hayden? And how was the tournament?
I'm doing very well today. A little jet lagged, but it's all right. Honestly, the Champions of Warhammer was like probably the best event I've ever been to. It was frankly amazing, and like almost everybody I met there was like incredibly nice, man. Um, like sometimes I feel like high level like competitive players get a bad rep. But everybody there, like, these guys are everybody's won a GT to play there, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's good. They're so good that they're like beyond that petty stuff, right?
Right.
So everybody was incredibly nice. I certainly had some rough games and I had some really good games. I ended up going 3-5, so 3 wins and 5 losses.
Which is really
But
respectable.
yeah, I was actually kind of expecting to do worse, right? There are people that only won 2 games. There are people that only won 1 game or 0 games. So, um, I did a lot better than I thought I would for like never having played in anything bigger than like 50
Yeah,
in for a
absolutely.
tournament. So,
I mean, if you consider, people like Scary went 4-4, I mean, 3-5 doesn't look that bad at all.
oh yeah, there were a ton of people that my first my first opponent was this incredibly nice guy. His name is like uh Kiete Kiete or something, and
Hmm.
he's like the king of Norway, right? That's his name. He's like the captain of the Norway team.
Hmm.
He's my first opponent. He first of all he destroyed me, but that was my first day when none of my friends were there because they were doing the narrative, so I was all by myself. I was like, yeah, man, I'm just here by myself. Like he was like, oh, come drink with us. So he invited me to hang out with the Swedish and the Norway team and at the bar, and I got to know all those guys. So like Bjorn, um, yeah, like Joshua from he has his own YouTube channel, like Happy Crumping Wargaming. I got to meet
Oh
him.
yeah, I've watched a couple of his videos. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I got to meet a bunch of nice people, so that was very cool. But
Awesome.
yeah. So do you want to go over
Yeah, let's go
my
ahead and
game
talk
one
about
by one?
the game. So you arrive there. It's probably a huge place,
Oh, it was
and
really big.
you come in and you play your first game, and who's your first opponent?
So I had Kete. I can't really. He's a Scandinavian name, right?
Hmm.
He was playing Hunter cohort. It was Ritual, which I do want to say is probably my least favorite primary. The one I'm weakest in. I don't have a good track record on that one. Uh, and I actually like kind of it's kind of a bad thing, but I kind of like don't like practicing it because I just don't like it.
Yeah.
But he was playing Skitari Hunter cohort. Um, and he actually even ended up 4-4. So, I mean, I thought he was just leagues better than me, but he ended up 4-4.
Hmm.
So, he had like a 30 Rust Stalker like melee pressure list, and he had 2 disintegrators, and 3 of those laser chickens, and then just a shit ton of infantry. And frankly, this is my list just doesn't have enough anti-infantry. Like, there's so much anti-tank. I didn't have any problems with his tanks, frankly. Like, I didn't have any problems with his heavy damage, but like he just had so much like little shots that it just like, especially the Avatar man. I looked at his army. I was like, his anti-tank's gonna do nothing to me. Let me be aggressive with the Avatar. Um, yeah, my Avatar got fucking destroyed, dude.
Yeah.
Like he had the 10-man flamer squad. They're rerolling wounds. And yeah, they just like pretty much picked up my avatar in one turn. And this is actually gonna become a theme because my avatar gets fucked in almost every game I play, even the ones I won.
He's not as
Because
durable as he seems, honestly. And a lot of people like,
yeah,
hype him up to be one of the most durable in the game, but he's not. He's really just not. People have tools to deal with him.
yeah, he's actually like if you dev wounds with grenades and stuff like that, he's so much easier to take out than people think he is, which is why I think I'm gonna, even though I frankly I love his model, man, and he actually does a lot of work when he's not getting killed, like you mean, but yeah, I just think he's a little too easy to kill, and frankly, I need more in my next list. I'm planning to go to LVO.
Hmm.
I'm gonna put a lot more general purpose like anti-infantry because that list against I just couldn't get through all the Scutari. I mean, he just had his entire army in the midboard, and I just turn by turn had to slowly kill all of his infantry. It just took too long for me to be able to get primaries, man.
Yeah.
Like the 30 Rust Stalkers, they're like T4, 2 wounds. You can give them 5 up, feel no pains. They just take forever to kill. So
Yeah,
I
it
just
seems like it. It seems like it.
and I mean at the end of the game, he barely had anything left. Like I think he had like man, I think he had like literally like one chicken walker and like a couple infantry, like units of one infantry. But like he just outscored me so incredibly well. I think it was like 100 to like 33 or something. So
Yeah, Skitarii can be hard to deal with because of all the bodies.
yeah,
Absolutely.
they're a matchup I practiced 2 games going into. Obviously not at his level, right? They're
Hmm.
just like some of my friends,
Right.
but I still struggle with them. The big thing is their arc rifles. They're like Vanguard. They're just like little shitty units that have like really good guns, especially the arc rifles, man. With those dev wounds, like I don't think my Scorpion ended up dying at the very end of the game, but like he just took so much wounds off my Scorpion and Avatar with those arc rifles. Um, just from just random shooting. Like every turn, he had like 4 or 5 of them,
Yeah,
and
what are
I
the
think they
arc
have
rifle
rapid fire.
profile? They're yeah,
Uh,
24
they're
inch rapid
rapid
fire,
fire,
right?
24 inch. They have anti-vehicle 4 up dev wounds, and they're like 2 or 3 damage, or they're D3 damage.
Oh, okay.
So the big problems is the dev wounds, right?
Right. Yeah, those are tough. That's tough. So like
And when
even
you have
against
that, the plasma gun, and the arquebus, which are all like 2 D3 damage, and you have like 5 squads with that, it ends up becoming a lot.
right.
So he just chipped me down. He had squad of those 10 flamer guys, and those guys I made sure to kill them really quickly, but not before they got my avatar. And I mean that was like 50 rerolling, they reroll wounds, right?
Yeah.
And they had like AP1, so it was like just so many shots from that.
Yeah, you can't save them all. Absolutely. And the half
So
damage
I
doesn't really help.
yeah, you just for that type of army, it's a lot of pressure. I just needed more infantry killing power. Um, yeah, and that's just frankly it. That unit or that army had probably like 100 bodies in it, and I just couldn't kill it all. I didn't get first turn either, so I wasn't able to move my tank out into the middle to body block them off the objective. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
honestly, Wind Riders could be your answer. You know, they're pretty
yeah.
good.
Wind Riders are quite good. But I mean they're Scutari, right? I don't think you need something at that level for Scutari.
Yeah,
But for some of these other matchups, they would be very good, like Space
absolutely.
Marines and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was my first game. My second game went incredibly well. I played into Iron Storm, and the guy is actually quite a good player. He was telling me he's won a couple Grand GTs of Space Marines. He's one of the better Space Marine players in America. I don't remember his name. I think it's like Jeremy or something. But he was he told me he was like, yeah, everybody hates when I play Space Marines because I bring their win percentage up by like 3%. Um, because they're
Just
so
enough.
bad and
Yeah,
yeah,
just
just
enough.
enough to not get buffed, right?
Right.
But I mean he had all tanks and I just killed his tanks like right away. I think he basically you're not allowed to concede, but he conceded. Like
Right.
his turn 2, I had already killed like 3 out of 4 of his dreadnoughts.
Wow.
And like all of his infantry and his tech marines with the warp spiders, right? Because I had 2 units.
Yeah.
I love that's what you got to do with lone ops is just he had the Calidus, right? And I just was like, sure, you can overwatch me, man. I'll put my warp spider squad here. You kill that squad. I'm just gonna put my other one here. Take out your tech marine. That removes your sustained hits aura and your +1. Or I think
Right.
it was lethals. I don't know which one it gives out. It gives one of those auras. So
Yeah, that's a good move. Absolutely. Same thing with IG. If you can get a, clear line of sight with some warp spiders within, 12 inches on like a tech priest or whatever to
yeah,
lock down those invul saves, like, yeah, do it every
exactly.
time.
It's big.
Yeah.
It might be, and also like you have the warp fighters there, and they're in the middle of the army. And I had this work out for me a couple of times where like people just don't want to move their units, because you can get overwatched.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
So I mean,
So
there's not a lot to talk about that game. It went quite quickly, but yeah, my anti-tank army did really well into an all-tank list. Who could have
right,
guessed?
right. And we did a review on your list before the tournament, and I'll put the list in the description for everybody listening. It's wild. He has a scorpion, he has some war walkers, just a ton of anti-tank. So it's no surprise that you did well into that matchup.
Yeah, I expected more tanks out of all of my games, but uh, my pairings really just got me into a lot of melee infantry armies. So
Hmm. So
my
that was your second game. So you're one and
yeah,
one, and that was the first day, right?
that was the first day. Yeah.
So second
Um.
day, you have some drinks that night,
Yeah.
and
Not like that impacted my performance. You know, I'm used to playing hungover.
of course, man, of course. So day two comes along, and what does your matchup on day two look like?
So I had Blood Angels and Warhorde Orcs. So against Orcs, I actually have there was a couple things that happened that made me. The guy was really nice. He was actually younger than me. I'm only 22. He was like 18. He was a good player as well, but some things just like did not work out for me in that game where I was a little salty that I lost. Just so unlucky, man. But Warhorde, I know Warhorde is the meta for orcs, but all the orc players around me like to play Bully Boys and the shooting detachment. So I had really not had a lot of experience into it. And so when I learned that, you know, these beast boys are getting their dudes getting like their beast bosses like getting 7 attacks with dev wounds, um against re-rolling wounds against vehicles and monsters, right?
Yeah.
And then lethals and sustains. I was like, oh fuck, because yeah, my avatar. I didn't get one shot surprisingly, but basically the problem that happened is so he goes first. He gets a really good stage. I understand that, right?
Hmm.
So I move my avatar back, very far back, in fact, to the point where I was like, "There's no way he rolls a 6 to advance and 2 6s to charge, or like an 11 to charge." But that's exactly what he did. I was really salty about that because you know the Beast Boys. I had blown up his transport, so he gets out 3 inches. Then he uses this stratagem, and there's an enhancement in the squad, right, to give them 2 extra inches of movement. So they
Right.
move 8. Then they advance, and they advanced 8 because the stratagem gives them extra 2 movement, and you roll a 6. And then he charges 12 plus 2, so
Oh,
14. So he charged me like I was basically on my home objective of the avatar, and he made that charge. I
that's
was like,
insane.
no way. Yeah.
Wow.
So he fucked up my avatar. Didn't kill it, surprisingly. But at that point, the damage was kind of already done, and I couldn't get rid of that squad because I think my avatar there's a -1 to wound stratagem and my avatar was bracketed, so the next turn I go in and hit him, and I only killed like 4 orcs because he was -1 to hit, -1 to wound. um
That's
so
unfortunate. Yeah.
yeah, and he's got the feel no pains on his the beast boys, so I ended up not being able to kill him. The other weird thing that happened was this was really all the TO's fault, but at that point on my second turn, right, when I had just been charged with the avatar, and I actually desperate breakouted him back because I was actually going to go for Gazgul, who was kind of in the middle of the board, and I was going to try and heroic challenge him out
Hmm.
to kill Gazgul, right? That would have gotten me because there was another B squad that had charged my Scorpion, but they had bounced off because they weren't getting I don't know, they didn't do as well. But and I had managed to taken those out with the Guardians because the Guardians with the Farseer, right, shooting into a 20-man squad with blast. They and then I had Eldrad as well, put +1 to wound on them. They picked up that boys squad real quick. But the problem is the TO, the orc guy was like, "Yeah, you can't heroic challenge Gazgul out." I was like, "Why not?" And then because you know that's how precision works, you allocate it to the character. He's like, "Ah, well, they're in a squad." I was like, "That's definitely not how that works." He's like, "Let's call a TO." And first of all, that is totally how it works. That TO is wrong. You definitely can target characters in a character squad with precision. That doesn't make it's in the wording that you choose the model, right?
Right.
But I wasn't really. I was like, oh, he's a GW TO, right? He should know his stuff. He didn't know his stuff, so he told me I couldn't precision out Gazgul with the avatar. So I kind of just gave up on that, and just went into his boys again, and that kind of ended up with Gaskell just running around and killing all my shit at the end of the game. Um,
That's unfortunate. That's
Another
really
thing that
unfortunate.
happened that was really unlucky is I moved my warp spiders, um, and I got overwatched by a battle wagon, and they just killed my entire warp spider squad.
Freaking battle wagon, man.
Yeah, like in Overwatch, I was like, "Are you serious?"
That's
He was like,
nuts.
"Sorry, man, that was really I just got really unlucky, and he was just quite lucky."
It seemed like he had
Um,
some really hot rolls. Yeah.
yeah, he had some super. I think in his turn two charges, he had like 12s on like every charge. So I
Oh,
just if we played again, maybe I could do a bit better. Also I went second. If I had went first, especially against orcs, it's a lot better. He had a lot of transports that were kind of just out in the open, and I was like really hoping I could go first just so I could pop them all. But yeah, that didn't work out. So
yeah.
and in the
Roll of the
end, I
dice.
just didn't have enough stuff to clear out all his models while also getting on objectives.
Right. That kind of
That
makes
was
sense.
another time that Fuegan did not come back. I rolled a 1 for Fuegan to
Oh,
reroll.
dude. So it
It
just
was
seemed
very
like,
unlucky.
oh, that was so
It was a
unlucky.
bad game. It's a bad
Yeah.
game for me,
Yeah. You know
unfortunately.
it's bad when all that happens and you're rolling ones for your stuff that needs 2+.
Hmm.
That's horrible. Absolutely horrible. So you got super unlucky with that game, unfortunately. What about your
Yeah,
game
I still managed
versus?
to score 40 points though, so that wasn't.
That's
It was
great
actually a better
considering.
loss though. Yeah, it
I
was a better
mean,
loss than my last one, right?
yeah, that's great considering everything that happened. What about the game you said Blood Angels you played against
I
also?
had a next blood. My next game was Blood Angels. This was one of two Blood Angels players I played against. And actually, both of these Blood Angelists were almost identical. So this first guy, he had Dante with the Sangard, right?
Hmm.
An infiltrator squad. He had two Vindicators, which I promptly, just killed.
Yeah.
He had Lamartes with the Death Company squad. They both had Calidus. Um, what else did they have? They both had a jump pack assault intercessor squad. The other guy I played against ended up having like a blade guard squad with the chaplain that gives them fights first, and then this guy just had like some extra like a reaver squad and a scout squad. So this guy, he's super nice. He's from Canada. And it was a really close game actually. I think it was something like 80 to 90. Um, and my avatar performed quite well. He actually tanked the entire Death Company brick, right? And
Wow.
then fought back and killed them all. It was really disappointing though because at the end of the game he got a 6 mortal wound grenade off on
Oh.
his and just killed my low health avatar.
Oh,
Because
that
at the
sucks.
end I was like I think I drew no prisoners and I was like, oh, my avatar's alive. I can go up and pick some of his uh lower characters, but that didn't work because I got grenaded. What happened was we kind of just like my avatar just chilled in the right behind the terrain that was the center. Ah, man, what I actually don't know what let me look at the terrain layouts real quick. It was the one where there's kind of just like nothing in the middle, right? And then there's maybe it was terrain layout 4, I think. But his death company and my Avatar just kind of had a standoff in the middle where he was behind his piece of terrain, I was behind my piece of terrain, and we just kind of chilled there because I didn't want to get charged by a sanguinary guard. I didn't want to get charged by either, but eventually I had to move him out into the middle right, and he won the durability contest against the Death Company, which was nice.
Hmm.
My Scorpion did a lot of work, especially against the Sangard. I was able to move it kind of to the side and angle and get he rapid ingress his Sangard kind of behind a corner, and I was able to get him with the Scorpion because it eats 5 damage, right? Any failed invul is going to kill one of them,
Right.
even if they're like -1 to hit, -1 to wound, which is only in combat.
Right.
But he can't put Armor of Contempt and then get cover and give him 3-ups. But I still ended up being able to kill enough that he had a really hard time killing my tank. Um, it kind of ended up the game at the end was man. I think he had like his Incursor squad and Dante only, and then he had a really popular strategy is the Foot Blood Angel Captain with the sustained hits 3 relic. So you can give them dev wounds and sustained hits 3 for like 8 attacks or some bullshit.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah, it's very strong. Fuegan did work on that game as well. He made a charge just across the board, and then kind of ended up fighting like a Reaver squad, a Scout squad, an Assault Intercessor squad, and the Sanguinary Guard like all at once.
Oh, that's sick. And he just killed all of them, or what?
No, he didn't kill all of them. He
Oh,
killed some of them, but
okay.
the main point was is that he kind of kept them there for a little while so that he
Yeah,
couldn't really get on me.
that's awesome. Yeah, Fuegan does work. He's a great character.
Well, Fuegan outperforms in most of my games at least. There was
Yeah.
one game, my earlier game, my AdMech game. I shot him at the disintegrator and he made the 6-up invul, and then I just didn't do anything. I was really disappointed on that because I was gonna one shot it, but
Yeah. I've
that game
only
was very close. It was very close. The guy was good. I really enjoyed that game. That was probably my favorite game that I played because I lost by a little bit. I learned a lot, especially about melee armies, which will come in because I played into a lot more melee armies after this. So,
yeah. So day two, you had two games. Um, Lost one because of terrible luck. Well, let's just put it that way. I
yeah,
think you would have done much better if you had a little bit better luck and he wasn't rolling like a god,
he
like an
rolled
orca
hot.
god.
Yeah.
And you had a game against Blood Angels and you lost only by a little bit, and that's pretty impressive considering Blood Angels are one of the more meta armies, and it seems like your army was more kitted to deal with tanks than a ton of infantry, a ton of marine profiles.
I
So,
also had a ton of experience playing against Blood Angels already.
mhm,
So that was another reason that I didn't lose miserably into his list because I just had experience with my list into his list, which I think going forward when I'm playing in any of these big tournaments, I'm gonna get a lot more of that because the next two lists that I played into were things I'd frankly never seen before, and they might be common, but not where I play, so I just didn't really know what to do. Right?
right. So day three now. This is day three. You have your last two games, and
No,
no,
there's
four
4 days.
days. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Of course, you have 8 games total. Okay, so day three. Who's your first opponent?
So this one was really weird, man. I'd never seen a Saga of Russ uh before ever. I barely even know what it did. He explained it to me, but I was a little confused. Um, and that was really my biggest downfall because honestly, a list like that, I should have been able to beat easily with my list. He had 6 Centurions, a squad of 10-man jump back intercessor with a captain. He had Murder Fang or whatever it's called. That thing's insane, by the way. Murder Fang. He had this captain with an assault intercessor squad in a repulsor executioner that does dev wounds on a 4-up to monsters and vehicles. He had Ulfric with a bunch of I think they're called like gray shields or some shit. They're like the Vanguard veterans of the Space Wolves, and
Mhm.
their whole deal is they reroll hits and wounds against monsters. Um, so you can already see he's gonna end up he'll end up later in the battle with sustained hits, lethal hits, rerolling everything, which is, Blood Angels got that, the Orcs got that. It's a bit of a it's kind of a like a trend on melee armies that kind of makes the avatar really easy to kill.
Yeah. Yeah, I found
So
that as well, unfortunately.
yeah, it's super disappointing, but that's just kind of the way is sustained lethal stacking that is just so strong, man.
Yeah, it
And
seems like
how
volume of attacks is really what is going to bring a lot of the
oh,
Eldari stuff down.
absolutely. The volume of attacks destroys the avatar because he only has 14 wounds, which is a lot, but he doesn't have the feel no pains like the Satans get, right?
Mhm.
So it ends up like making him take a bunch of 3-up saves or like 4-up saves. It's just gonna kill him.
Right. Absolutely. And you can only take one of them. Only one Avatar
Yeah,
of Khaine. So,
he can't take 6 avatars of game, which would be cool.
yeah.
So
So,
this
yeah.
Space Wolves detachment, right? Basically, he has to kill a vehicle to get lethal hits, right?
Hmm.
So he wouldn't have it if I didn't let him kill a vehicle, but I made a very bad decision in the beginning where I moved up my Warwalkers kind of out into the middle. I got first turn. I was like, oh, cool, I can shoot his juicy tanks and blow them up, which it did happen. I blew up his repulsor, but the problem was is that now my tanks are there for him to kill really easily, and then he just gets lethal hits on all his army.
Right.
So I probably shouldn't have done that. He had, I think there's, I don't know how he gets. I should probably check. He gets sustained hits somehow. I think actually no, you can choose to start with that, right? You can choose to start with one of them. So
Mhm.
he already had sustained hits, and then he got lethals from killing my vehicle. So that was my biggest blunder. I shouldn't have moved my vehicles out to let him kill them. If I had kept them in there, no lethal hits, that means he's having a lot harder of a time killing my avatar and my tank, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I should have done is Ulfric the Slayer. He's the chaplain, the special chaplain that goes with the Gray Shields or whatever they're called, and he's the one giving them +1 to hit and reroll hits and wounds.
That's
So
nasty.
I was not really realizing how strong he was, but obviously I have Eldrad, right? So what I could have done is blown up his transport. I really could have easily done it. I just kind of was like, whatever. Like, they surely can't hit as hard as Blood Angel Sanguinary Guard, right? That's literally what I had going in my head. I was like, there's no way that people would play this more often, right? If it was better. That's what I was thinking. I was like, they don't do as much damage as Blood Angels, right? But they did. They totally did. Um,
Yeah.
so I kind of just left the unit alone, even though I could have easily sniped out Ulfric the Slayer. I was like, if I killed him, then the squad would just not even touch my avatar. So that was a big blunder on my part. The other blunder I did was I ended up charging my Scorpion. I tank shocked his assault intercessors, and that wasn't the problem because his assault intercessors didn't really hurt my Scorpion. But the problem was is that before I had charged, I had seen him rapid ingress Murderfang, right?
Right.
And Murderfang's whole deal is that he fights and he has a pretty nasty stat profile, but then every time you shoot or fight against him, he gets to shoot or fight against you. So
Wow.
basically what that means is after I charged, I'm getting on the objective, so I did get points for that. But he charges me, he hits me with like 8 strength 15 D6 plus 1 attacks that have sustains and lethals. Doesn't kill my tank, but gets pretty close to it. Then I have to hit him back because I'm in combat. Then he gets to hit me again. And just
Oh.
yeah, I was that's just way too many attacks. That's like 16 las cannons, pretty much.
Yeah,
Getting
that's
sustained and
insane.
lethals.
Absolutely insane. Murder Fang. Dreadnought, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that before, so I was just not expecting it to be so ridiculous.
Yeah, he's like a help root kind of. I've seen the model.
Yeah, he's very nasty. He
Yeah.
also had the Centurion assault Centurions, which I promptly killed with the Avatar of Khaine. I think he probably did that on purpose. He wanted to bait me out with an expensive unit, so it worked. But I did pick up the assault Devastator Centurions, or no, they were assault Centurions. I picked them up quite quickly because
Yeah.
they don't get involves, right?
Right. I mean, they're pretty expensive too. If you had 6 of them.
Yeah, but it ended up working because he needed my Avatar in the midboard so that he could charge them with the Gray Shield guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Take out the Avatar of Khaine. Yeah,
And
that's
then
smart.
once my avatar died, I just couldn't really keep his melee shit off me. Um,
Yeah, because that's
yeah,
really the
man, that
only thing in
squad
your
was just
list
too
to
tough.
protect against that stuff. Yeah, that seems like a tough list and honestly, like well put together.
No,
Something you
seriously, I
don't
was
usually see.
surprised at how good it was, and I was like, when I saw it at first, I was like confused. I was like, "There's no way this can be good. I've never seen it before." But I was completely surprised.
Yeah,
But the other thing
yeah.
I would say is that now that I've played into the list, I think that I probably could beat it. And he even said the same thing. He was like, "Yeah, man, if we played 10 times, you'd probably beat me 5 times." Because my list has what it takes to kill his list, because he does have a few tanks in there. He really only has like 30 infantry. I could have easily sniped out Ulfric the Slayer, and I don't even think he would have touched my avatar if I had sniped him out,
Right.
right? If I hadn't given lethal hits either, that would have been easy.
Yeah, that's probably why
But I
people
just
don't
made
play
too
it
many
as much.
mistakes.
Yeah, it's just because
Yeah,
if you know how the list works, you can dismantle it little by little. But if you don't know how it works, it's really strong. And it seems like that's what his
exactly.
list could do. So interesting. Very
And
cool
that's
counter meta list, kind of, too.
Oh, absolutely. And that's like when you're playing these high level events, like you really need to practice in the many matchups,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Even then, sometimes you just won't expect somebody to bring something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was your first game, and then
Yeah.
you had a second game that day. Who did
So
you
the
play against
second
that?
game, we were playing into Death Guard. And unfortunately, this is probably the worst matchup I could have gotten. It was actually quite weird because the pairings reset. I was supposed to play into a Custodes vehicle list. I was super hyped for that, man. And
Hmm.
then I saw him. He was like, "Oh, pairings changed. I have to go somewhere else." I was like, "Fuck!" I was so pissed. And I ended up into a Death Guard all vehicle list.
Interesting.
And that would sound really nice, except for the fact that his entire army has. Well, first of all, they have 5 of invols, and like every single one of those tanks is like 100 points.
Yeah.
Second of all, he had Mortarion, and what Mortarion does is pretty much just ignore my entire battle plan, which is ignoring all my modifiers,
Right.
and also giving his guys rerolling ones to wound. Right.
Hmm.
So, kind of what happened was, my Avatar of Khaine got one shot by a single predator,
Wow.
and it was the autocannon predator too.
Oh.
Because he's ignoring my -1 to hit, my -1 to wound, and my having damage.
Right.
And he's rerolling wounds. So yeah, I didn't even expect it to happen. I moved my Avatar of Khaine out. I killed his carnivores because he put them out to try and get a charge on me. He failed, and I went over there and killed him with the Avatar, and I was like, nice, cool. He also put bloat drones out in the center, and for some reason I failed to kill them because he made all of his 5-up saves. So that was kind of annoying because, those flamethrowers really restricted what I could do. And that's a big thing with Eldar, right? Is you don't want to like get overwatched against
Right.
these really strong flamers. So I probably should have prioritized them a little bit more because these are like 90-point units that are just like completely taking away my ability to move like anywhere.
Yeah, that's what Death Guard do really well. Is they're slow as fuck, but they can put some nasty Overwatch in certain places, and you're just not able to get around it.
Yeah, absolutely. He also had a shit ton of indirect, so he had the blight haulers, and then he also had the knights with the havoc launchers, right? So yet
Right.
another thing that really does well into Eldar, especially MSU lists. Against this guy, I had like both my warp spider squads, my striking scorpion squad, and Fuegan all reserved because I didn't want them getting shot out by the blight haulers indirect. And that was actually a good play because I actually ended up getting a decent amount of secondary points off putting them in because he just had vehicles, right? So he couldn't screen me out that well, but I didn't end up making me. I just couldn't get any primaries because he just kind of flooded the board with vehicles, and my Bright Lances honestly just whiffed most of the time, which was really disappointing. I mean, he has 5 of invols on his entire vehicles, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It
Bright
happens
Lance
sometimes.
is yeah, exactly. Like those 5-up invuls, they don't look like much on paper, but they come into
Yeah,
play
when you
way
get
more
one
often.
shot, yeah, when you get one shot and like you also aren't even guaranteed to roll an 8, like
Yeah. I was
well, you
actually
can be guaranteed to roll one, but
right, right, exactly. I was actually talking to my buddy the other day, and I was joking that like everything in the game now has an invul save almost. It's like everywhere you look, there's invul saves everywhere. Whereas, when I first started playing, invuls were like a rarity. If you had an invul save, it was like something really special. And like now, it's like everything has it.
that's why I like playing the Space Marines, man. They don't have involves for some
I
reason.
I know, right? I know exactly. Everything else does though. It's weird.
Yeah, Space Marine vehicles are so juicy.
I know, dude. They're like the best to kill. They're so fun to kill, man. Just like pop them one after the other.
Indeed.
Okay,
So
so
really, I just they ignore modifiers. I did manage to kill a lot of his vehicles in the end. My Scorpion did so much work there, but I just couldn't get primaries. It's just all it
yeah,
is if you have a bad like with pressure lists like that where they have a lot of models, they can kind of just flood the board, push you off primaries.
right.
What
That's what
what
I'm
can you do,
noticing
right?
too. Yeah, that's what I'm noticing about a lot of lists in competitive play right now is they're just taking so much stuff because stuff has gotten to the point where it's cheap enough to spam and they just shove it onto objectives and say, "What are you going to do about it?" And Eldar have a lot of really expensive tools that can they can definitely kill things, but you can't flood the board with Eldar stuff typically, unless you play
Yeah,
a
I mean,
very
unless
different
you
type
run
of
like
list.
all Guardians or something, or
Right.
like that guy with the all Wave Serpents, which I think he might have ended up going 4 and 4.
Interesting.
But
That's really funny that that happened actually, because when we were reviewing that list, I was like, that's actually kind of a clever idea because of what people are doing in the meta with all the vehicles and stuff. It's like, why not do it with wave serpents? But yeah,
yeah, I mean, I honestly couldn't have predicted. I think as far as the lists go and like the Eldar players, I think it really is just like everybody that brought a list had a pretty good list. And like it's really just determined on I think the list that placed the highest was the All Rangers list actually. And I actually saw that guy play against one of the Swedish guys and I was pretty surprised. But I mean, to be fair, it does synergize around lethal hits and spamming lethal hits,
hmm
which makes sense because honestly, lethal hits are like the most broken thing in the game.
I know, right? We're just saying how like it's super powerful. Yeah, lethal hits are very strong, dude. They're very strong. I mean, Wind Riders with lethal hits take out tanks.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely. They're great.
Yeah. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and it makes sense that he did really well because you need that because you need basically what it is you have your anti-tank element, but that's not always going to be enough to deal with all the different spam that people can throw at you with vehicles, right? And like tough
Yeah, lethal
targets.
hits are just general purpose, which is why they're so nice.
Absolutely, and they can give you consistent value over the course of the game, whereas your anti-tank units might be taken out and then you have nothing. you
Yeah,
know
or they could just roll a 5 up for that invul.
right.
And then you're
Exactly.
then you're like 100 points worth of bright lances doesn't do anything.
Right. And speaking of lethal hits, I mean that's why Guard are doing so well. My God. I mean their entire tank force, I mean you rarely see a Guard list without like at least 5 tanks nowadays at the minimum. Um Gets lethals against other vehicles and monsters. So it's like no wonder they're doing so well, right? Like they get a
Custodies as
bunch of
well, they
attacks.
get lethals.
Yeah.
Blood Angels lethals, Space Wolves lethals, Death Guard also lethals, uh, Orcs lethals. I mean, like just lethals is just like the best ability.
Yeah, it is.
Weight of dice plus lethals just gives you so much of an advantage
I
over other armies.
honestly like I know this may be controversial, but I'm thinking of like, possible changes to the game that could make it a little more balanced. I'm thinking lethal's a little too powerful for the
I
game.
agree. I
Um
think like
I don't
low
even
key they
think
should
it's
remove them or rework them.
I agree. I think it should be reworked. Lethal should be something else. Like maybe a lethal hit does an additional damage when you roll the damage roll or something like that, but I don't think it should do an auto wound, you know? It's like they're complaining about miracle dice and fate dice being able to be basically remove rolls from the game and just say, "Yep, I auto pass." Well, what's the difference with lethal hits? Oh, I auto wound, right?
Yeah, it just removes like a huge statistic for rolling because normally like you have to factor in the percentage of your hits and the percentage of your wounds, but now you're just factoring in the percentage of your hits. And that's like a man, what would it be? Like a 10% chance you wound or something instead of having to roll 3 ups to hit.
Yeah,
And that,
18% or
yeah, okay.
16.66 at whatever percent that you'll
Yeah.
get the hit.
So you
Yeah,
just have that instead of you rolling your percentage to hit, then rolling your percentage to wound. It's just that, and then also you can factor in the fact that you might roll sixes to wound in the end.
right.
So you end up like with just a better percentage to wound than you would like even if you maybe got +1 to wound. Maybe lethal should just be +1 to wound. I wonder what the numbers are on that.
Yeah, that'd
I
be
don't know.
interesting. I think that would be still fine, honestly. And I think sustained hits is fine. I think dev wounds, a lot of people, don't like dev wounds. I think maybe just tweak that a little bit, maybe
I
to
think there's just a lot. Honestly,
yeah.
my LVO list, I think I'm gonna go for like every single unit in my army has dev wounds.
That's interesting. Yeah, that could work. Dev wounds are really
I'm
powerful.
thinking of Yanari, a lot of Haywire Blasters, a lot of Warp Spiders, a lot of Scorpions, a lot of Mandrakes, and Yvrain.
Yeah.
I haven't tried it yet, but I'm thinking about it because that's just general purpose.
And it could be
Works on
really good.
everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be really good. Warp spiders, like you said, like mandrakes. What else has dev wounds that like we're missing here? I guess you don't want to take a night spinner.
Mm,
Forgot
I'm
all
I'm good
about
on
that.
that.
Yeah.
I'm good on that.
Yeah.
I wanted to take a Phoenix Lord, but I realized that you can't take Yanari if you take a Phoenix Lord.
That's
So
right. True.
I really want the Mandrakes and the Haywire Blasters,
Yeah,
man.
you could take Skyweavers too. They're dev wounds
Oh,
and
I have
reroll.
both.
Oh,
Don't worry,
nice.
I have both. I have 12 from the Scourges and like 4 more from the Skywivers. So,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
all
Yeah,
right,
day
let's move
four.
on to the matches I
Yes.
win. Let's talk
Yes.
about this. I want to talk about
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah. So day 4 now, right?
Yes.
Yes. Day 4.
So I play into Blood Angels, Malaysia.
Hmm.
Is the guy from Malaysia. Then I played into this guy who is apparently one of the best Knight players in America, Dick McTickle. He's super nice. He's from Texas, uh, a pretty well known Knight player, right? And I was actually happy to win. He was like, "Hey man, like good job. Now you have this under your belt. You beat like I've been consistently in the top 3 Knight players in North America for like the past 5 years." I was like, "Shit, nice."
That's
I
awesome.
mean, my army did super counter his, but it's all right.
Yeah. No kidding.
So this Blood Angel player, and this was we were talking about this before we started recording, right? But
Hmm.
this guy was kind of sucked to play against, right? And
Yeah.
it was funny because my friends who were not playing in the tournament were watching, and they were like, "Yeah, that guy was being a dick." So he had his Blood Angels. He was not as good of a player as the other Blood Angel player. He didn't stage as well. He staged his Sanguinary Guard. He kept them on the board, didn't rapid ingress them. He got first turn, staged them. This was layout 7, I think. The one where there's the 2 L's in the middle, right? And then
Yeah.
So he staged them behind one of his L's, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So I moved up my Striking Scorpions and Warp Spiders and kind of just went to town on them. Uh, and I killed like 2 or 3. And I just managed to he kind of just didn't care about me shooting his army, which I thought was kind of weird. So, after I shot them, and then I charged him with the scorpions, killed another guy. Then he went to charge my. He actually went for my Farseer right away, which I was kind of surprised about because, I mean, it kind of makes sense to like cut off my fate dice, right? But like moving your really expensive unit into my backline, like turn 2, and then kind of like that unit is like 300 points, right?
Yeah.
Like that for like a Farseer and a Guardian squad is probably not the best trade, I could say.
Yeah. No, it's not. Definitely not.
So he did manage to kill my Farseer, but not without he moved him past my past my avatar. This was the only game where my avatar lived. Um and then I overwatched him, killed like 2 more of his Sanguinary Guard. I think he only got into combat with Dante at that point.
Oh.
Um but yeah, it was not a great move from him, but at this point there was a bit of like we didn't really go over the cocked dice, right?
Hmm.
The buildings were raised, like the building outlines were raised. They were clear like plexiglass, and
Hmm.
so sometimes you get the dice like hang on the sides. And so I was kind of getting annoyed that he was like kind of just re-rolling whatever he wanted, and that was if it was good for him or good not for him. The guy I played next game was like, yeah, like if I can balance a dice on top of the dice, then I'm not re-rolling it. But if I can't, then I'm gonna re-roll it. It's like that
Right.
sounds good, man.
Yeah.
So
That's
this
how it should be.
guy, he like he was just being very particular, and he was just getting charges that I thought he wasn't gonna be able to get, and it started bothering me. And one thing that really bothered me is in my shooting phase, my second shooting phase, I had a Viper. I didn't move it because I knew it could already see his Vindicator, or so I thought. And again, the building outlines are clear, right? And this piece of terrain that was in the way that I didn't see because it was on the other side of the board, uh, it was one of those 2 inches with a very tiny piece of terrain,
Yeah.
like like literally like the size of a paint pot, right? It was so small.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm shooting, and he's like, you can't see me. I was like, what do you mean? Like, why can't I see you? He's like, look, there's this terrain here. I was like, oh man, I didn't see that. It's literally see through. It's like a see through brick. How am I on the other side of the board? He's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I can just like I can easily rotate my Viper and see you. He's like, you can't do that. I was like, are you serious, man? Like I didn't. I thought I was in range. This literally can't see anything else. Like why would I not move it, right? He was like, well, that's how everybody else played with me. I was like, is that really how everybody else was treating you? Because every person I played into was super nice. And he was like, oh, well, I guess I'll give it to you. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. Like, I was like, if you want to play like that, like, we can play like that. But so it kind of pissed me off, but we got over it, right? Um, and I mean, I was giving him like all the leeway in the world, right? Anything he forgot, I was like, yeah, you can go back and do that. Like, if you forgot a charge or something, or I think he forgot to put in his Calidus, and I was like, hey, you should put in your Calidus because it stopped me from phantasming my Storm Guardian squad because the Calidus makes your CP
Right.
cost for stratagems go up, and I was like, hey, put it down. He was like, oh yeah, thanks man, like I'll put it down right here, and then make it so you can't run away from my charge of my Death Company, and then subsequently he killed my Storm Guardians.
Right. So you were giving him,
So I was giving him, I was helping him. You know, we're playing a highly competitive Warhammer game. We should play it right. So I was telling him, don't forget these things.
right.
And then he was, going off and letting me make mistakes and like not even, and then trying to get on me for it. So that was annoying. And then kind of what started happening was he was making charges like with his Death Company and stuff that I didn't think he was going to be able to make. And so he had a Blade Guard squad with a chaplain, right? And he put them in. And he kept on moving them so far, man. And so he was on like a side objective, and I was on the middle objective. I moved my guys the farthest possible amount of distance away from his guys without like being off the objective. And I measured it was like 23 inches or something, right? And even if he wanted to run in charge with a 6-inch moving unit, like, and he rolled like a 3 or something for the, like, I don't think he needs to roll like a 10 or something for the charge, right?
Yeah.
And I measured it in my movement phase. I was like, oh, okay, like you're 23 inches away. You're probably not going to make this charge. I can't really do anything about. I needed to keep that to score points, but. And so then he goes and he rolls his charge. He's like, oh, I made it. I'm like, dude, you rolled an 8. You didn't make it. And he was like, no, look, like I'm measuring. Like my guys made it. Like I look, I'm within 9 inches of you. I was like, yeah, that's cool, but I measured like before, and you must have moved your guys too far because I measured in my movement phase how far your guys are away, and there's no physical possible way that you would be able to make like a 23-inch charge on an 8 with like 9 inches of movement. Like that doesn't get you 23.
Yeah, no way. He definitely
And he's
moved
like,
his guys farther than he should have.
yeah, and then he's like, well, let me just move my guys back, and I was like, no, dude, like even moving your guys back is like I don't know where they were. I just know how far they were again, away from me in my turn. And he was like, oh well, fine. And he had another thing where he moved his guys and in his turn, right? And this is beginning of the battle round, so I had a command point, and I was like, oh, I'm overwatching you. He's like, you can't. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you don't have any you can't overwatch me. You don't have any command points. So I was like, dude, it's the beginning of the battle round. And like for some reason we argued about that.
That's weird.
I don't understand how that's an argument, but I was like, yeah, it was kind of weird. So
That's really strange.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was just a strange game. I just ended up winning, man. He just like couldn't get on the primaries. I just killed his units and then left the Blade Guard unit on a side objective, right? That's one of my favorite things to do is when you have a slow moving unit, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of just leave it on a side objective and sure he'll get like 10, 20 points over the course of the game, but that's like 300 or 400 points he's not using.
Right.
So I ended up doing that. And then except for that squad, I tabled him. I got into his backlines with Fuegan, and Fuegan just chopped up his scouts, his intercessors, everything.
Yeah. You
So it was a good game.
Yeah. Yeah, that you kind of wonder how, I mean, not to, I don't want to like throw this player under the bus or whatever, but you kind of wonder how somebody like that gets to the world championships, with that attitude. You know what I mean about the game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to blame it entirely on him because I think it probably because I did ask him like, were your other opponents acting like this? I think it was a little rude for me to say like to a grown adult, but I was like, are your other opponents acting like this? Because everybody else has been really nice and reasonable on all of my games. He was like, yeah, they were kind of like that. So I think it could have been like his previous games. He was like getting gotcha'd by guys, and he didn't want to get gotcha'd by me. But like, still, that doesn't excuse like the way he was moving his models, which was like really pissing me off. So I had to start measuring in my movement phase his charges so that he didn't like magically make a charge he couldn't have.
Right. Seems like he was really salty and, kind of last
Yeah, I mean,
day
I was trying to be
stuff.
super nice. Yeah, I guess it was the last day, right? Like we were both 1-5 at that point. So like
Yeah.
it seems like the people on the lower tables at that point were just like kind of assholes.
Yeah.
They're like the players that they're good, but they're not quite good enough to make it to the mid and top tables, right? And normally you see this in tournaments in like the mid tables, but since this is a tournament full of like the best players, right? That's kind of the lower players that would be doing that,
Right.
and they're just salty that they're not winning, they're not used to it. I just want to keep my values of good sportsmanship, right? So
Yeah.
it was a little disappointing, but I still won, so
Yeah. Absolutely. It is what it is. And I mean, you had the better attitude, so you deserve the win. Simple as that.
absolutely.
So your last game was
Imperial Knights, man.
Imperial
I
Knights.
was
That's
so
right.
happy when I saw that. Uh, my anti-tank list did very well into his tank list. So
Yeah. I heard that Imperial
he,
Knights are going to be getting buffed soon or something like that. But I may be wrong.
yeah. So I actually saw some statistics. Right, everybody thought they were gonna get quote unquote nerfed because they're going down to T11,
Uh-huh.
but they're getting 4 or 6 more wounds, something like that.
Yeah.
And so the math on it is that unless you're shooting like a strength 12 weapon at it, like a Bright Lance or a Las Cannon, because they have the 6-up feel no pains, they're actually harder to kill.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it's an overall
Even if
buff.
it's like melee attacks, like they're actually still harder to kill. It's literally just that the Bright Lances, because all these melee attacks from these big characters like other knights or like Angron, they're already wounding them on like 2s or 3s anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But the Bright Lances were wounding on 4s, and now they're wounding on 3s, so it makes the real anti-tank weapons better against them. But like things like multi-meltas, like plasma, just like anything that's, I guess lethal hits don't count, but like any smaller shots like battle cannons, they, you have to chew through 6 more wounds with 6 up feel no pains. So
Yeah. Maybe that's a lethal hits adjustment.
maybe, yeah.
Interesting. So you won that game. You had a fun time, I'm guessing, because it just seems like it's the perfect matchup for the Scorpion.
Oh
And
yeah, the Scorpion did a lot of work into his knights. I had one thing that happened was so he had the Knight Errant that can deep strike, and I had my avatar out, right? And I moved it across the board, started beating up some armigers, and I was kind of prepared to take the Knight Errant in the face.
mhm,
Uh, so I put it down, it's -1 to wound, -1 to hit. He shoots the Knight Errant at it with its big ass melt a gun that's melt a 6, and does literally no damage to me
wow.
because I pass one, he misses one of his hits, doesn't wound like 2 of his hits. And by the way, I didn't realize this, but knights get like literally our detachment rule, so they get one reroll to hit and one reroll to wound,
Yeah, they do.
plus a 6-up deal no pain. So I was like, that doesn't feel very fair, but whatever.
Yeah, it's like one of
But
those
he did
things where,
nothing to it.
yeah, people complain about our detachment rule, but Knights have it.
Yeah, it's not like it's not it's certainly strong, but I guess our army doesn't really need it as much as the knights do.
Yeah, true.
So he did nothing to my avatar. Um, I this is a kind of a weird situation, right? So the Scorpion blows knights up on a 4. Knights have D6 plus 2 explosion. So I positioned my avatar outside of 6 inches of the knight so that if it blew up, I wouldn't get killed and I could charge it if it didn't die. I put it down to like 2 wounds, I think, with the Scorpion
Hmm.
and like 1 Bright Lance. And then I was like, I'm gonna go to charge it. I rolled like a 2. So I was like, shit, I got a command point reroll. I only had 1 command point though, and he had a Cowardice. And I didn't realize that the Cowardice was right there, so I couldn't reroll it. So my avatar was just dead in the water, like out in the middle of the field, and then it got blown up.
Oh,
So that was a huge blunder because obviously if I killed the errant, then I don't get the melt of 6 in my face. And then I could have piled into this other armor that was like right behind it, and that would have worked out very well for me. That would have been like a much. I mean, I still won. I think I got like 86. Actually, let me check. I still won by a decent a bit, but I could have gotten probably a 100 if that had happened, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, I think in our first 2 turns, it was quite funny where he had like an armiger out and I had my warwalkers out, and we were kind of just shooting back and forth at each other and both passing all of our invols. So like we just bouncing off each other. That was pretty frustrating for both of us.
That's super funny, dude, that a Warwalker Warwalker is dueling the Armiger and like kind
Yeah,
of
and they
winning.
did nothing for 2 turns to each
Yeah.
other.
That's so funny,
Just
dude.
pretty funny.
Oh man. That's
But that
great.
guy was super nice, man, and I really enjoyed talking to him. Yeah, he was pretty gung ho, but he was also like it's somebody that he kind of seemed intimidating. But he was still super nice. Like I was worried that he was going to be another one of these like, he was an older guy, right? And he's like he had a pretty like an intimidating demeanor, I'd say.
Hmm.
Um but he was super chill, man. He was like, yeah, like if you make any mistakes or chill, we can go back. And he was explaining to me he's big in the Texas GT circuit. So I know there was some deal with a Raven, a Storm Raven cheater back
Right.
in Texas, and he was explaining to me all about that and talking to me about like angle cheating and stuff like that. It was pretty fun. He's a super nice
That's
guy.
that's funny.
And that game just ended up like my army just countered his, man. Like he didn't even move his Canis Rex. His Canis Rex just stayed in the back the entire game because if he had moved out, I just killed it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you have a Scorpion on the other side, you know?
Yeah.
And
I
it's
did quick work of his knights, but he still scored pretty well, especially on the last turn, man. I was surprised. Man, I want to see what this. All right, let me look. I have it on my phone real quick. Tabletop battles. He got last game. Oh, hold on. Games. 80. He got 55. I got 83. And I think he couldn't really score any secondaries for most of the game, but he managed to deny me a ton of primary points at the end.
mhm.
I didn't have a whole lot of units left, and I couldn't get my Scorpion onto the center objective. And he put his knight in the middle, and it was kind of like I had to either kill the knight or do a secondary. And killing the knight, I already had the 10 primaries. I think it was Linchpin, right? So that was like I could only get a max of like you can get a max of 15, right? And I was getting 13 already. And then there was also a secondary I could have done with Fuegan, who was in the middle. And it was either do sabotage for 3 or try and shoot the knight. And maybe he makes his 4 up invul, right? And then I don't get any points, or I could get 2 points. And I couldn't get both of them. I didn't even kill Canis Rex either. I shot him with 1 turn of shooting at the end and didn't manage to kill him. So I still ended up winning mainly because of primaries. He
Right.
couldn't go onto the primaries without me just blasting him off of them. So
Yeah, that seems pretty legit. I mean, with the army that you have, for sure. So it seems like that was a pretty fun last game. I mean, he played his best game. You played your best game. It was just a bad matchup for him. You beat your Blood Angels opponent. You won one other game in that tournament. And it seems like there was a couple of other ones that were like really close losses or you just got unlucky, which honestly, like, I think you had a pretty good run at the World Championships, to be honest.
yeah, I was just not expecting to do as well as I did, honestly. I mean, I was like, newcomer, kind of newbie. I'm not like a lot of these other people who had attended last year or are regularly winning GTs, right? We don't even have that many tournaments in Japan.
Right.
So, 3 wins for me felt really good. I had one really close loss, which felt really good. Which puts me, I placed 202, so not quite in the top 200, but um, still, you know, I guess just barely in the lower third of the people that were playing.
Yeah.
I could have done a little better if I had done a little better on my losses and not losing by so much, because 3 of those losses I just had really bad scores, like 30s, 40s, right? If I had lost more gracefully, I could have placed a lot higher, I think.
Yeah,
But that just comes down to knowing the matchups, right?
right.
Which I didn't. So,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you were surprised by the Wolf Saga or whatever, Saga list.
indeed.
And the Orc player got really lucky against you. I mean, I've never heard of that, dude. Like a
Yeah,
6-inch
I was a
advance
little
and
I was a little unhappy, not gonna lie.
oh man, that's crazy shit. That's crazy shit. That reminds me of like, yeah, I had a buddy like way back who ran orcs and you know, Wa turn back in the Wa days, when you rolled a D6 advance. I don't know if you remember this, but Wa worked a little differently in older editions, and he had his whole
For like
army lined up.
eighth edition.
Yeah, well, basically, you would roll your quote unquote advance roll in your shooting phase instead of shooting. It was like must have been sixth edition, and he had his
Oh, okay.
army like lined up, and I shit you not, he had 4 or 5 units, 6, 5, 6, 6. I was like, no way, dude. Just he crashed against me like a wave, a tidal wave, dude, and I couldn't do shit about it because I had placed all my kind of units just far enough so he would have to roll a 6 or a 5 to like charge me, and I thought like in my clever mind I was like, oh, well, not so clever.
Surely he's not gonna get all of those,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. He'll get one of them, he'll kill something, I'll kill it, and then I'll just screen the rest of his army out when he's off turn, and it'll be a beautiful Eldar victory for the superior species of the galaxy. And man, it was just not that way, man. The orcs were having none of that. I was like, oh fuck. So
That's
that seems like
exactly what my plan was too, man.
how the Eldari battle plans go to shambles sometimes. Oh man, that's funny.
Can't predict everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, look at Iandon.
Yeah,
Uh,
not predict very well.
yeah. All right, man. Well, it looks like you had a great tournament. Do you have any closing remarks about it? I mean, I know you learned a lot from the tournament, and you're going to LVO soon. We'll have to have another, kind of discussion about your LVO list for sure before you head into that. But
I still need to do some practice with it, but yeah, we could totally do that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you have any closing remarks about the event?
Yeah, so a couple things. If you want to get better at Warhammer, the best way is to lose to people that are better than you. Like that's just the best way to get better, is just to play people that are way better than you.
Absolutely.
And then also, if you're looking to start really getting really good and like winning tournaments and stuff like that, I think one of the most important things is practicing matchups. Because no matter how well you know your list, if you don't know the other person's list, maybe they know the matchup better than you do, then they have an advantage on you. And it's not even just not knowing the rules, but because your opponent should be telling you all your rules before you play, right? But you have to put that together in your mind, and it might take a few games to kind of find out the strategy you can use to beat the opponent's list, which is something I didn't do very well for this tournament, but I will definitely practice a lot more into different armies next time. So those are the two biggest things I learned.
Absolutely. Your point about having to you lose to better players, it's absolutely 100% true. Because you'll pick up more advice from those players after the game. You'll be able to kind of like know what you did wrong more starkly. And human beings, I mean, we remember things based off of our mistakes first and foremost. Like if we make a mistake and it's a punishing mistake, we will remember that much more clearly than if we had won that game. And I mean, mistakes in won games are often forgotten, right? But
I totally agree with that, man.
yeah,
You don't learn too much from winning unless maybe if it's a close win, then you'll remember it. But like, I don't remember too much from what I did well on the guy that conceded. So
absolutely, absolutely. All right, Hayden. Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your insights about the tournament and the World Championships. That was awesome. It's a shame that the Eldar didn't take it, but there was a lot of good players there and a lot of really mean army lists. Imperial Guard did very well. Custodes won the whole thing, which was insane. And we had a couple of other high placing lists there, but maybe next time with our new codex, perhaps. And yeah,
That's what I'm looking for.
absolutely. All right, thank you, Hayden. And I will see you guys next time. If, by the way, to the community out there, if you guys want to talk to Hayden and I or to other Aeldari players in the community, join our Discord. I'll leave the link in the description. You just have to sign up for a Patreon free trial. You can cancel it, of course, totally free. Join the community, talk to us, have a great time, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.